So I already covered the first 7 episodes of Transformers Prime and decided why not keep going. Break down the series episode by episode whenever I want, and then who knows, maybe do the same for Robots in Disguise, to truly find out once and for all how well it all stands up when watched back to back. So let's talk about episode 8, Conjob. The episode begins with Blockhead and Miko finishing up their chores, with Miko now wanting him to go dune bashing but him not wanting to due to how the sand affected him last time. Seeing Miko disappointed and caring about how she feels, he then says there's a monster truck rally in town to divert her attention and hopefully cheer her up, showcasing Blockhead's emotional intelligence in terms of how she feels, and ways that he can cheer her up based on how well he knows her. Ratchet then tells Optimus that he's receiving a channel from a starship within their solar system. He says it's an Autobot signal, leaving RC to explain to the kids that Autobots scattered around the galaxy when Cybertron died, but that
cons have been known to bait traps with false beacons.
This sets up a few things: the possibility that this signal is a bot, that it could be just as easily a trap, and that regardless of its validity there are now to be confirmed Autobots out there that could one day rejoin the fight in the future. It adds more lore to the conflict, how it affected their old world, and how the same outcome could occur here as the battle between bots and cons rages on. Lastly, it's another example of the dirty yet brilliantly effective tactics used by the cons, how deceptive they truly are and how they should never be taken lightly. Autobots are shown to be very caring in regards to their allies. If there's a chance they could save one, regardless of the chance of it being a trap, there's a high likelihood that that's a risk that they would take. Optimus hails the ship, keeping things extremely professional while only revealing important details, taking the risk of contacting the ship but minimizing the chance of negative consequences should it actually be a trap. The Transformer on board the ship says he's gotten
I've had warmer welcomes from Decepticon combat brigades,
causing Blockhead to react in surprise, excitement, and familiarity whenever he reveals the Autobot's name, Wheeljack. He approaches the screen speaking to someone that's not only important to him, but also a big thorn in the Decepticon's backside, which is revealed by Blockhead saying,
"You old con crusher! What are you doing all the way out here?"
Wheeljack immediately recognizes Blockhead's voice, asking what all the security is about, a reference to the careful words used by Prime in the original hail. Blockhead explains that Earth is crawling with cons, with Wheeljack saying that the quickest he can arrive on Earth is tomorrow, as long as he goes as fast as he can. Miko gets excited about the prospect of a new bot, but Optimus stays wary, asking Blockhead to verify his voice since Prime only knows Wheeljack from reputation alone. This sets up that Wheeljack is known for his feats, given that Blockhead referred to him as a con crusher, but leaving the question open of what else he could be known for Prime to remember his name. The fact that Prime cared enough to remember the name of a bot that he never met shows a lot about his character, and the care that he showcases for those that fight alongside him. His trust in Blockhead's word regarding his friend's voice also shows that, as well as Blockhead's reliability, showcased in my last video by Prime's verbal defense of Blockhead, as well as represented by Blockhead's actions on their own. Once Block verifies his voice, Optimus doesn't question him again, immediately having Ratchet send landing coordinates and wishing Wheeljack safe travels, further representing what I said a moment ago. Before the communication closes, Blockhead references what Wheeljack said earlier, telling him he'll have a proper welcome when they see each other again. This is a good example of dialogue that didn't need to happen. The scene technically didn't change anything in terms of how the episode plays out, but it was skillfully added nonetheless. Its addition showcased the bond between Blockhead and Wheeljack by showing not only that Blockhead was listening and took the joke Wheeljack said into consideration, but it was also a moment where Block didn't want the call to end. He just wanted to talk to his friend a little longer, and it's honestly a sweet moment. RC, realizing this, jokingly asks who the boyfriend is, giving Blockhead a chance to open up as he so obviously wants to do. Blockhead says that he and Wheeljack were part of the same combat unit called the Wreckers, speaking with his hands to help add effect and animate what his face can't really portray, as he says that Wheeljack's arrival spells bad news for the cons, adding on to the mystery of his capabilities that has been established through hyping him up as the episode goes on. Soundwave and Starscream were listening in, showing an ability of Soundwaves to listen into communication channels, as well as an ability to identify who someone is by their voice as he shows what appears to be a picture of Wheeljack. Starscream refers to Wheeljack as a war hero, coming up with a plan that has a limited window of time to be executed. He calls in someone named Makeshift, a new named Decepticon who gets plugged into by Soundwave and, as showcased by a shadow, transformed to look like someone else, foreshadowed to be Wheeljack by the prior scenes, as well as this line from Starscream.
I too know how to prepare a proper welcome.
Referencing the discussions about good welcomes and adding another layer to those scenes as well as their meanings. The kids are talking about Wheeljack, excited as kids would be, but Miko saying,
have to find his own human though.
Was pretty funny, I have to admit. Ratchet powers up the ground bridge, but things are still on the fritz due to the scraplet outbreak last video. Another example of continuity linking the episodes together, and that if something major happens in the future, the damage could be more permanent than what has been teased by the scraplets. Cliffjumper set up that the bots aren't safe from death, but the scraplets set up that their home isn't either, including machines that they need to function as a unit as well as be able to keep up with the cons such as the ground bridge. Jack tries to wrap his head around the plan, kind of a decent way to loop the audience in, that was set up by the ground bridge malfunction as well as Jack's take charge personality. Optimus says that they are making him land far away and then bridging him over, as a precaution to keep the Decepticons away from the base. This is a clever way to give the cons a chance to swap Wheeljack out with Makeshift, which is what their plan is set up to be. It also stops the cons from immediately learning the base's location and therefore having to use their plan. The scraplets damaging the ground bridge also buys time for the plan to commence in a very natural way that also helps with the building of consequences and continuity. Blockhead is pacing back and forth, so excited he can't stand still, saying that him and Wheeljack were practically partners and tonight they are going to party. We then see on monitor that cons are closing in on Wheeljack's position, immediately firing up Blockhead, turning his excitement into anger.
Con scum!
Wheeljack shows off his aviation abilities, dodging a barrage of blaster fire, but eventually being taken down, crashing into the ground below. The cons land and approach the crash site. Jackie blasts one, exits the vehicle and says,
If you're trying to ruin my day, you're gonna have to try harder.
Which is such a cool entrance, honestly. It shows his confidence in his abilities, his courage against overwhelming numbers, making us wonder what the Wrecker is actually capable of. The answer to that being shown right after as he mows through cons like nobody's business. Starscream then tries to send Makeshift down before the bots arrive, with us then shifting to Team Prime without us seeing the outcome of that decision, leaving it up in the air, adding tension to the air of every scene following it. When Team Prime arrive, Wheeljack is finishing off the cons, with RC saying he missed one so he executes him on screen, further adding to the mystery of who he is since he's willing to unalive Decepticons without a moment of hesitation. If it's Wheeljack, then it goes with his characterization of a con basher pretty well, but if it's Makeshift, then it shows the lengths he's willing to go to in order to maintain his deception and con his way into a successful mission. Blockhead gives Wheeljack a hug and they return to base as the ground bridge goes down. Consequences from the scraplets from last episode and a good nod at continuity. It also makes it so if this is Makeshift, he can't immediately open the ground bridge for the cons to come through or for him to leave through, having to maintain his ruse for longer, building tension with every scene since he's going to get closer and closer to being found out. If it's Wheeljack, then it keeps you guessing on that by not letting the opening of the ground bridge spoil the mystery, keeping us in the dark and because of that, wary of who very well may be an ally to our heroes. Blockhead introduces Wheeljack to Miko, with Jackie asking if Miko keeps Bok out of trouble, and Miko saying it finds them anyway, getting praised by Jackie for her response.
We're gonna get along just fine.
Wheeljack and Optimus meet, share the respectful "it's an honor" before Wheeljack gives a debriefing of his time traveling space alone. Unable to find friend or foe until we ended up here, Prime offers him a spot on the team and Wheeljack agrees. This was not only a needed outcome for the team, but also showed the respect Prime has for both Blockhead as well as Wheeljack. We established last episode that the Autobots were short on manpower, hands to keep the ship afloat, and this would be a step in the right direction of solving that issue. Too bad that right after we learned that this is indeed Makeshift and not Wheeljack. I wish they'd have kept the mystery alive longer, maybe even for multiple episodes, with Makeshift's job switching from opening the bridge, which hasn't been explained in the episode yet and has a limited time frame, to a full-on deep cover operation to gather as much intel as possible as he stays with the team. Maybe even having a dilemma after being there for so long and growing accustomed to his treatment there apart from the Decepticons. Starscream says they lost Makeshift's location once he went through the ground bridge, showing possible shielding from the inside and adding lore to why the Autobots have remained undetected for so long. Screamer then goes in to talk with the real Wheeljack, saying that the imposter is already in place, with Wheeljack having no doubts that Blockhead will figure him out and find out the truth. Wheeljack brings up Megatron as if this was his idea. Starscream says it was his idea and that he's the leader now, causing Wheeljack to laugh. In character, referencing Cliffjumper's demise, Starscream goes to snuff out Wheeljack in the same way but gets stopped by Soundwave. Still needing to get a jab in, he tells Wheeljack the plan, making this villain monologue feel less out of place than a lot of other media since it's being used to hurt Wheeljack instead of just being told for the sake of telling. He says Makeshift just needs needs to open the bridge in the base, which we established is currently having technical issues, and once that bridge is open, Starscream will send his troops through to raid the place. Back at base, Miko is playing the guitar as Bulkhead and Makeshift play a game that RC says is called lobbing, throwing a giant ball of scrap as hard as possible back and forth, adding some lore to the Autobots by saying it's a favorite amongst the warrior class. Ratchet is working on the ground bridge as Raph starts to dance to Miko strumming, doing the robot as B joins in, catching Ratchet's attention and a disappointed sigh in the process. Optimus is noticeably absent from the scene, with RC saying that Primes don't party, which makes sense with his characterization up to this point, shown last episode when he was struggling with sharing his emotions as him and RC almost froze to death. The first hint of Wheeljack not being who he claims then happens with him missing a lob and it hitting the ground bridge instead. Since this was a game popular amongst the Autobot warrior class, Wheeljack should be accustomed to it and rather competitive in his enjoyment of it. Makeshift not having the past experiences with the game for not being an Autobot warrior would be far more likely to make beginner mistakes. The second hint happens right after as he questions Ratchet about the bridge. Here we learn that Ratchet built it from scratch, something he is very proud of, showcased in this scene.
That's quite a feat of engineering.
Yes, it is.
We also learn that the bridge will be inoperable for at least a few hours, adding more risk of Makeshift being found out, since every second adds more pressure and chances of him slipping up. I just wish it was still a mystery of if it was Makeshift or not at this point, so these hints meant as much to us as they would the Autobots he's trying to fool. We then get a quick scene of Starscream saying that Makeshift hasn't fulfilled his duty and can't keep up the ruse forever, foreshadowing a mess up in the future and hinting at it possibly being this next scene where Bulkhead is telling a story and trying to keep tagging Makeshift in, with him only saying details that are broadly applicable, interchangeable depending on the story, and lacking the flair we saw from Wheeljack in his introductory scene. There's a good joke here.
Yeah, I'm still picking shrapnel out of my backside.
Which also complements the lines from both Optimus and RC last video where they said Bulkhead wasn't graceful as well as too large for this world. We see that the defrag process is halfway completed, so Makeshift has been at this for around an hour and a half, offering plenty of time for the cracks to show. In fact, Bulkhead notices that he seems off, quiet, as Makeshift says he's been stuck in a can too long and is going stir crazy, trying to get out of the base so his location comes back online for the cons to track. Bulkhead says he can go with him on patrol in the morning, with Makeshift adamant on now, which is pretty suspicious all things considered. Bulkhead tells Makeshift to tell everyone about the Battle of Darkmouth Pass, an important battle to bring up for multiple reasons that we'll get to later. Just remember that Makeshift told Bulkhead to tell it instead, as it'll be significant in the coming future. Makeshift wonders if Miko can give him a tour of the rest of the base, and we get a good performance from Bulkhead's voice actor Kevin Michael Richardson.
Yeah, sure, Jackie. Hey, go ahead.
The expressiveness in his voice there just always stuck out to me for some reason. As Makeshift and Miko walk away, Miko wonders about how many cons he scrapped and questions like that, as RC notices something is bothering Bulkhead, equating it to jealousy from Miko's fascination with who she believes is Wheeljack, but Bulkhead ensuring her that something is off about Jackie instead. This demonstrates the bond Bulkhead and Wheeljack once shared, how even after all this time, he still knows his friend, his brother, and that this isn't him. RC tries to raise the logical arguments that they haven't seen each other in years, and that Wheeljack may be rocket lagged, or that he may have just changed instead. Bulkhead adamant that Wheeljack wouldn't change, having faith in the friend he once knew. Back at the real Jack, he snaps a con's neck, using the blaster from the con to shoot a control panel and break himself free, showing his ingenuity and the combat prowess we'd expect from a war veteran, a wrecker such as himself, which Bulkhead has hyped up all episode up to this moment. Wheeljack walks off screen as Makeshift walks on, with Miko finishing the tour by saying,
Energon stockpile, power generator, armory, everything you need to blow the joint sky high.
Pretty on the nose, especially since nothing will come from this line, but given Miko's flair for the dramatics, it fits well with her character, especially since her next line complements that, since when Makeshift wonders where the bunker is located, Miko says she'd have to rip out his spark chamber if she was ever to tell him, before saying she's joking and letting him know. Now all he needs to do is find a way to communicate that intel back to the cons, making the time limit now also be against the bots, since they need to suss him out before he can accomplish his goals. Makeshift questions on if there's a way out, with Miko saying she'd show him, but then the two of them arrive with Bulkhead talking about Wheeljack to the others. He brings up Darkmouth Pass again, forcing Makeshift to tell the story, one that he gets almost entirely right except for one glaring issue.
I I wasn't there.
Something that Bulkhead states Makeshift wouldn't know if he just read the details on Wheeljack's public service record. This shows an expansion of the intelligence Bulkhead demonstrated in my first video. There he had good tactical intelligence by staying out of the line of fire as well as getting onto the Nemesis using its elevation to his advantage. Here he manipulated the intel that he knew his enemy may have had, contrasting it with what he knew they wouldn't in order to back Makeshift into a corner, forcing him to reveal himself, which is what he does immediately after by using Miko as a hostage as he waits for the bridge to finish so that he could let the cons come through it, saying that Starscream is making sport of Wheeljack, as we see that in actuality Wheeljack's taking on the Decepticon army that's waiting for the bridge to open. As he battles the cons, Makeshift opens the bridge, causing Wheeljack to surprise him with a kick as he's who comes through it, with another solid line right after.
I'd shut that hole before the stink comes through,
causing the bridge to be shut on the cons on the other side. Wheeljack and Makeshift engage in combat, with the real Wheeljack winning since skills don't come with the appearance. Ratchet reopens the bridge and Bulkhead throws Makeshift through, with Wheeljack proving who he is, a warrior class Autobot, by saying,
"Nice lob."
Makeshift goes to tell Screamer where the base is, based on what Miko said, but the grenade on his side is live, causing him to explode into pieces as Starscream and Soundwave barely get away. Back at the Autobot base, they offer Wheeljack a spot on the team, with him politely declining. Bulkhead says that Jackie doesn't change, a nod to what he said earlier, while also saying that he'll always come back, foreshadowing the future. Wheeljack offers Bulkhead to come with, saying there's room for two even with his big size, but Bulkhead stays, looking at his team, at Miko, demonstrating the roots he laid in this quiet little town. Miko takes a picture of the brothers and the episode ends with that final snap. So was this a good episode? It was, although it did fall into the same pitfalls that earlier episodes have, leaving it closer to mediocre than great. They introduced a new Decepticon, this one with a unique ability that we see opposed to being told about, and then yet again kill him off in his introductory episode. I understand that they probably saw this shape-shifting ability as a gimmick that once we see it, it loses its uniqueness, but as seen with someone like Clayface or the Scraws, the idea of a shapeshifter can be utilized to a great degree if the writers have the creativity to do it. Killing off Makeshift doesn't add any stakes. We already know named cons can die. That was established literally 2 episodes ago, so his character was another rushed waste, same as Skyquake. The mystery was flubbed up a little as well. They shown the reality of Makeshift as Wheeljack too early in my personal opinion. This is a nitpick for me, given that it can be argued that us knowing what the bots don't adds tension itself, but they had hints set up well enough that we could come to the conclusion ourselves without it being spelled out. For a continuity heavy show, they reset by the end as well, with the damage to the bridge now fixed from the scraplet issue, the explosion on the Nemesis never brought up, Makeshift being written entirely out of the show without even a mention of his existence, and Wheeljack leaving the team at the end of the episode. There's a lot that makes it understandable for why people wouldn't like it. There is good though, introducing us to Wheeljack's existence, characterizing him as a gruff butt kicker, and establishing the bond him and Bulkhead share, some pretty solid action scenes, moments where Bulkhead showcases some pretty good intelligence, Starscream having yet another good idea even if the execution wasn't great, and the continuity nods all come together to make it an above average experience, even if not perfect nor coming close to the quality of Darkness Rising in terms of pacing and overall quality. Should I keep covering Transformers Prime? Let me know in the comments below. If you learned anything, subscribe, dislike if you disliked it, and for more news, reviews, and whatever we choose, stay tuned to Nerdsfeed. Have a great day. Thank you.